The following video has been prepared by Safety and Technical Training in collaboration with Delta Airlines and the National Air Traffic Controllers Association. It provides a demonstration of the safety and training benefits that can result when pilots and controllers sit down face-to-face to discuss complex procedures used in the National Airspace System. This video presents a case study for the use of a climb via procedure out of Salt Lake City Airport. We trust you will enjoy this video and find it of value.
22161. This is Cactus 1539. Hit birds.
Pilots and controllers speak to each other constantly to keep the National Airspace System safe and efficient. The success of that relationship can be seen every day. But that success, built on the expert use of proven methods, can actually hinder the adoption of new procedures that promise greater safety and efficiency. For the moment, pilot-controller communication is limited to the microphone and data link. But safety data makes it exceedingly clear that greater cooperation and collaboration between controllers and pilots will be necessary to meet modernization goals. To work out new methods, pilots and controllers need to meet and go beyond the mic.
The NAS itself is getting more and more crowded every day. You read articles all the time. It's causing us to rethink how we use that precious commodity.
To take one example, PBN is a next-gen initiative introduced into the NAS with high expectations.
It's amazing what PBN can do to the National Airspace System in improving its operations. With climb via and descend via type of descents, we'll optimize and improve safety, and we'll find a more efficient net.
PBN, or Performance-Based Navigation, enables aircraft to fly more precisely and predictably for more efficiency. For this to work, pilots and controllers use phraseology such as climb via and descend via, meaning to fly a PBN procedure as published. Climb via clearances are beneficial, but initial implementation challenges identified a need for detailed training.
Climb via originally came to our attention through ATSAP reports from controllers, and then we started to see an influx of reports from pilots through the Confidential Information Share Program. Both pilots and controllers were confused as to the procedures and how it worked. Pilots were confused with some of the phraseology and were not answering controllers back in the phraseology that controllers expected to hear it from. And in return, controllers were issuing directions and control instructions to pilots that would result with the pilot having to go to a lot of head down time to reprogram the FMC in the cockpit.
The FAA realized this problem could not be solved by controller training alone. Something new had to be done. What if pilots and controllers sat down together to discuss climb via problems? Could they fix them?
Welcome to Salt Lake City International Airport.
With support from Delta Airlines, the FAA selected Salt Lake City as a test case for joint pilot-controller training.
Salt Lake City International Airport is one of the top airports in the country for our on-time departures. That's because of our operations staff that work very hard to make things run, and a great partnership that we have here with the FAA to serve the 21 million passengers that fly through our airport every year.
Making these operations possible takes a group of trained professionals on both sides of the mic. Joint pilot-controller training became a reality right here at Salt Lake TRACON when Delta pilot Matt Price sat down with Tower Controller George Brown, TRACON controllers Kaylin Lopez and Christopher Casey, and Center Controller Joel Brown to discuss issues surrounding climb via. Our case study procedure is called the Climb Via LEATS 4 Rock Springs Transition. The LEATS departure procedure is 9 fixes in the Utah sky that string out for more than 150 miles eastbound. Primary terrain obstacles are the Ochre Mountains to the south and the Wasatch Mountains to the east. LEATS also has an altitude restriction early in the procedure due to downwind arrivals. There are also speed restrictions. Flown as published, LEATS takes as few as 4 instructions and 4 readbacks. Much less chance for confusion than before. Unfortunately, that's not how it always is. Controller and pilot safety reports identified several points where the climb via procedure became more complicated than expected. Flight management system, initial pilot check-in, interim altitude, and climb and maintain. First, let's hear from Matt Price about what goes into preparing an aircraft to fly a climb via procedure.
It's more of a role today of pilot flying and pilot monitoring. The pilot flying will primarily do all of the briefings for the flight pertaining to the flight, and the pilot monitoring will add anything they think might be beneficial that the pilot flying missed. Today, if I were flying this flight and talking about the departure, we would look at each fix individually to make sure that the database loaded the climb via LEATS 4 departure correctly, including the altitudes of below 10,000 at Zeta, the next one is at 230 and at or above 12,000, and so on all the way out. Looking at the Rock Springs transition, which our route change has us, we can even see there's a restriction here at Plogue. Moving out to that fix, once again verifying 250 at or below 230. Everything is loaded correctly. We're now happy with how the route is entered into our box.
The pre-flight briefing is an important part of the procedure, which can be jeopardized by late changes.
When loading the departures for climb via in the FMS, 99% of the time the database has the fixes correct. When they're runway dependent, you want to check it a little bit more. If we get a runway change, maybe we don't change it correctly. I know that's one of the number one reasons why our nav off the ground gets an error. Get a runway change, we change the data, but we forget to change the FMS. Or vice versa, change the FMS, forget to change the data. And crews needed to build the habit of verifying it. From my experience, it's been a few years since that. Crews are very good about verifying altitudes, fixes, and going over either a climb via or descend via, piece by piece, making sure it's all in the box.
Now, let's look at initial pilot check-in. When done correctly, it should sound like this.
Salt Lake departure, Delta 414 Heavy, leaving 5,500, climbing via LEATS 4 departure.
Delta 414 Heavy, Salt Lake departure, radar contact, traffic 11, moving 12 o'clock, 3 miles northbound, citation 1000.
Delta 414, roger, looking.
Problems occur when the pilot leaves out information the controller needs, such as whether the pilot is using the LEATS 4 procedure. If the words climb via are not used, the controller has to verify the pilot is still using the procedure.
Departure, Delta 414 Heavy, climbing to flight level 230.
Delta 414 Heavy, Salt Lake departure, radar contact, say altitude, leaving, verify climbing via LEATS 4 departure.
Delta 414 Heavy, roger, we're at a 5,500, climbing via LEATS 4 departure.
When transferring to a frequency in center airspace, pilots need to reiterate they are climbing via the procedure.
Salt Lake Center, Delta 414 Heavies, climbing to flight level 230.
Delta 414 Heavy, Salt Lake Center, roger, verified, climbing via the LEATS 4 departure.
That's affirmative, Delta 414 Heavies, climbing via LEATS 4 departure.
Including the climb via phraseology is imperative during any pilot check-in when flying a PBN departure.
When a pilot checks in properly, I know exactly what he's doing. But if they gave a vague answer, they're climbing out of via, and I know that they're supposed to be stopping, or if they just give an altitude that they're climbing out of, I don't know what altitude they're stopping at. And they may be a potential conflict for somebody who's in the downwind, somebody who's on a diverging heading, for instance.
Safety data indicated that interim changes to a procedure, such as altitude and heading, can cause confusion about whether a return to the procedure will take place, and if so, what parts of the procedure are still in place.
Delta 414 Heavy, Salt Lake clearance, cleared to the Denver airport via LEATS 4 departure, Rock Springs transition, then as filed. Climb via SID, accept maintain 10,000, maintain 230 knot, squawk 6063.
The reason I used the accept, or the climb via accept, maintain 10,000 was because we did have issues with our pilots not knowing altitudes when we first started out with these departure procedures, and they were climbing through our downwind, and we had a huge amount of deviations over a very short period of time, and that brought about the accept maintain 10,000 for our facility.
The change of interim altitude is during a climb via. it's going to be climb via except maintain an altitude. But we still want you to climb via. So if you have another point prior to whenever you'd reach 15,000 on the departure, say you have a point that crosses it at 12, we expect you to cross that point at 12 because there's other traffic, or to stay within the airspace or the guidelines, and then continue your climb via and then maintain 15,000. You're stopping there. And generally you're getting a reason why, but if we don't give you a reason why, then there's definitely a reason why.
When the climb via clearance is reissued, all remaining speed and altitude restrictions are in place as published.
Delta 414 Heavy, traffic no factor, climb via leads for departure.
Delta 414 Heavy, roger. Climb via leads for departure.
Safety reporting revealed another overlooked requirement, issuing an altitude to maintain when an aircraft is taken off an RNAV procedure.
When vectored off a climb via procedure, if the controller doesn't specify an altitude, especially if we have a lower altitude than the top limit, it makes us wonder about obstacle clearance, especially in mountainous terrain. It's very essential for our computers and our aircraft to know where we need to stop and if we're going to be safe.
So an aircraft can be taken off of an RNAV procedure for different reasons. They could be for weather, for traffic. Those are the most likely scenarios. In the event that we do that, we do need to issue an altitude to maintain, a heading to fly, and a plan to, or expect to resume that departure further along the road.
Delta 414 Heavy, flighting 280, vector for weather, climb and maintain 10,000, expect to resume the leads for departure.
Delta 414 Heavy, roger. We'll turn in left to heading 280 and we'll maintain 10,000. We'll expect to resume leads departure.
When doing a climb via procedure, it's new to pilots. So as simple as a climb and maintain may be, guys are a little nervous about putting that altitude in and deleting the altitudes. The other thing I'd like controllers to realize with the climb via procedures, or even descend via procedures, is that if they clear us direct past a point that had either an altitude restriction or a speed restriction, our airplane no longer has that altitude or speed restriction in there unless they request us to do something a few miles from whatever point they cleared us from.
Advising the pilot of the intention to place the aircraft back on the procedure allows the aircrew time to program the flight management system.
As we depart out of Salt Lake, let's say as we approach P-Pig, the air traffic controller puts us on a heading. Well, we know that we're maintaining 10,000, and we would turn the heading to whatever heading he gave us and put the aircraft in heading select. Right there, it's a heading of west at 270, maintaining 10. If the air traffic controller didn't query or issue us a new altitude, we'd query them about did they still want us to go to 10, since that's part of our initial climb via clearance.
Delta 414 Heavy, turn right direct plonge, climb via leads for departure.
Delta 414 Heavy, roger. Direct plonge and then climb via the leads departure.
Now, when the air traffic controller wants us to rejoin direct, one of the things, once again, just like giving them a shortcut that we ask they understand, is that if they clear us direct to Huck, you notice Zeta is below 10,000. If I get cleared to climb via the SID, direct Huck, I'm going to put 230 in because it's in this, that's what the procedure goes towards, and then I'm going to go direct Huck, therefore deleting the below 10,000 that was at the fix before Zeta. Therefore, I will not most likely be below 10,000 if the aircraft performance is capable, not on a hot day.
The preceding scenarios highlight several important points for pilots and controllers. The pilot in the flight management system scenario shows how correctly loading a flight plan into the FMS takes time and concentration. Late changes introduce complexity into the critical moments before departure. Controllers, be aware of how focused and busy pilots are preparing for departure. Runway changes may require pilots to repeat steps, re-entering, re-verifying, and re-briefing the departure. The initial pilot check-in scenario shows the need for the clear, concise exchange of information when transferring frequencies within the air traffic system. Checking in correctly on a new frequency is important. Pilots cannot assume that the flight changes given to one controller have been relayed to another. Controllers expect that aircrews on a new frequency will verbally relay their next course of action so the controller has a clear understanding of what to expect. Proper initial pilot check-in provides controllers with a clear understanding of the intentions of the aircrew. Pilots, don't make a controller guess. Tell them what they need to know, the altitude being left, whether using the climb via procedure, and any exceptions. The interim altitude scenario reveals how it is often necessary for controllers to interrupt a climb via procedure with vectors or altitude adjustments. When this happens, controllers must advise aircrews of three things: the reason for the vector, the new heading, and the new altitude. Controllers should also advise of the intention to return the aircraft to the climb via procedure if appropriate. The climb and maintain scenario emphasizes that climb via and climb and maintain are not the same thing. Climb via is a procedure with built-in restrictions loaded into the flight management system. Using the words climb via means the pilot is flying and will fly the procedure as published. Climb and maintain relieves the pilot of waypoint altitude restrictions on the climb via procedure. When exceptions are made to the climb via procedure, pilots need time to incorporate the changes into their flight management system. Controllers and pilots share a deep bond over safety and efficiency in the National Airspace System. They are used to talking to each other over the microphone, not so much face-to-face. But beyond the microphone, they can quickly connect on issues that can't be discussed during flights. Joint pilot-controller training brings pilots and controllers together for greater understanding and appreciation of each other's efforts. Like this.
So for me, a couple things, just maybe a question for you. As you come off on this, say, lease for departure, and we've told you to climb via, except maintain 10,000 via your clearance, and you check in properly, and we say, radar contact, and you get maybe past Zeta, and you're still stuck at 10,000 via the clearance, and we're a little bit late, and we say climb via leads for departure, and we don't tell you to delete that HUC restriction. What is your standpoint on that, and how do you handle that from your seat?
Well, it's only a 7-mile leg.
Yeah, so
2,000 feet, 7 miles. Even on a cold winter day and half full airplane, I will say climb via the leads 4. It's going to be tough to get HUC at 12.
Okay.
And then you can make the call from there. You're going to leave me at 10, or you're going to let me do it and work with, maybe coordinating with the approach controller, since you're working departure at this point, and let them know that I might be, 11.5 or 12 or something below it. A lot of the times I'll tell you what I can do and let you continue to make your game plan as you work it. And that's what I've noticed a lot of my coworkers do too.
Okay. As far as we're concerned, we should never even do that. That's not part of us doing our job correctly. So that's what we would say generally is climb via leads for departure, delete the HUC restriction, and then you can continue just climbing, and the only next restriction would be plonge at that altitude.
Correct.
And so I just wanted to see what you would say reference crossing restrictions, and us giving them maybe a little bit late, but generally we're not doing that.
Most of the time what I would do, and all my coworkers, is we'll read back the clearance, tell you it's going to be tough.
Okay.
And would you like us to really try to do it, whether it's a descent or a climb? But everybody should always let you know that it's going to be tough, and I've noticed that we will do that. One of the other things that I kind of wanted to point out was you guys are always giving the climb maintain or climb via the leads 4 except maintain 10,000. When we depart, our FMS is always programmed for the complete climb via. It's only that top altitude in the mode control panel that we have at 10. So if you did want to start a climb via before Zeta, it's very easy for us to do that. I would simply dial in 230 and tell the aircraft to VNAV or PROF or whatever the nomenclature of that type of aircraft is.
But in that particular case, it would still stop at Zeta below 10 and then continue the climb, correct?
Correct. If you gave me
Unless
that clearance,
we
if you gave me that clearance right here and you said climb via, I would dial in 230, select VNAV, PROF, whatever it is, and the aircraft would stay at 10 until we're crossing that fix, and then it would start its climb to cross HUC at or above 12.
What is what's the challenge for pilots with the climb and maintain phraseology versus climb via phraseology?
It's very simple. However, it's just a few words, and I will dare to say of my opinion that pilots are timid with it. One of the things that I think could help, like I said in the transition, I know you guys are always busy. I've sat position, especially when weather comes through, and I'm at awe how you guys work. But I will say, when you guys can remind guys, hey, are you climbing via or climb, and I don't know if the .65 allows this, but 9 out of the 10 guys that are nervous about the climb and maintain 230, and then you watch us, stay level at 10 until Zeta, and then we start climbing out. I know you guys see that all the time. If you said climb unrestricted and maintain 230, I don't know if the .65 allows it. Well, guys get used to the nomenclature in this climb via. 9 out of 10 people you would see the aircraft start climbing before Zeta,
and
instead of us sitting there.
The 7110.65 doesn't have the unrestricted in there, and that's the issue that we're having with different airports are telling you climb unrestricted, and then here we're just saying climb and maintain. Yeah. So we get the question back, is that an unrestricted climb? We're trying to get that zoned in to be more accurate between everyone else.
Yeah, and that's one of our challenges. Different airports operate different ways. Certain places control your speeds. Atlanta, you go into Washington Dulles, they expect you to control your speeds. So it's learning where you go and things like that. And when it's your first time into an airport, you kind of have a guessing game of what they're exactly looking.
Can I back up a little bit? Reference the crossing restriction again. If we were to give you a crossing restriction that was late, in this case, we told you too late to climb via and you couldn't meet the 12 at Huck. If we relieve you of that speed restriction, does that then help you quite a bit in order to meet that, or does that?
Speeds in a climb via, the only thing that I would do is maybe have the if I was at 230 here, I would maybe tell the aircraft 210, give myself a little bit more pitch to try to make it. But a lot of the time where speed relief helps is more in the descend via area. If you've got us back at 250 and I tell you an altitude's going to be tight, if you say, okay, relieve the speed back to 250 as soon as you can, and I can put the aircraft up to 290 real quick, I'm going to be able to make that crossing restriction for you. And those are kind of the way. In a climb via, it's nowhere near. The other thing I want to caution against that is the heavy aircraft. 230, if I slow back to 210, it's probably a speed where I need to start putting out flaps. So I'm not even going to utilize that option if you did give me speed relief in a climb. It's our most heavy time of the aircraft, obviously, or when we depart, most fuel, especially the international birds, your Paris and Amsterdam out of here. A lot of the time you'll notice they'll ask for the 230 relief right away because they can't even pull the flaps up till they're faster than that. So they're trying to get that aircraft clean, and it allows them to actually climb better. So the speed relief more helps in the descend via than the climb via.
Pilots and controllers each play a role in the success of new procedures. Joint pilot controller training combines those roles into a powerful team to improve the National Airspace System.
Two main points came out for me that I would like to emphasize for the controllers and the pilots. For the pilots, the initial check-in, we need that to be proper. We need the altitude you're leaving and that you're climbing via the procedure. Those two words, climb via, convey a lot of information to us. It tells us that you understand the procedure, that you're following the procedure to the end, to the altitude that you need to go to, whether it's a top altitude or an interim altitude. It also tells me that you're going to comply with all the restrictions on the way out the procedure, whether it's 2 or 10. If we don't get that information, then we have a problem because now I have to ask you a question and we have to have a conversation. And with each transmission, there's a chance that we can at least triple the amount of errors. First, I have to give the instruction. You have to read it back correctly. You have to execute it, and then I have to monitor that it's done correctly. This is exactly the thing that we're trying to prevent by using these types of procedures to cut out all the extra communication. So it's real important for us for you to check in properly. The main point for the controllers to understand is that we need to relay the proper information to the pilots. When we take them off a procedure, there's 3 things we need to give them. A reason for the vector, whether it's for weather, spacing, airspace, traffic, any number of reasons. They need to know why we're taking them off the procedure. The second thing is an altitude to maintain. This is a requirement on our part, and it also protects them. They are no longer on the procedure. We're responsible for terrain obstruction clearance when they're out in open space, and we know what those minimum altitudes are. The third thing is if we're going to put them back on the procedure, we need to tell them to expect to resume. That way they won't drop all the fixes out of their box. And later on, if they had done that, they would have had to re-enter, which takes a lot of time. They have to put in the fix. The pilots have to verify it. They have to brief it, and then they have to execute it. a lot of work for one change in the procedure. So as controllers, we need to realize in order to keep their workload down, to give them those three things that we want them to do. If their workload goes down, ours goes down. It's good for everybody.